This weekend, there will be a stage reading of the Off-Broadway play, Occupied Territories, which delves into the impact war has on family relationships. Some of those involved in the project are Vietnam veterans. Carolee McGrath sat down with co-writer and director Mollye Maxner, a Northampton native, and co-writer and actress Nancy Bannon to find out more about the production.
In 2014, I was in conversation with a theater in D.C. called Theater Alliance of Washington, D.C., and we had an idea of making a play of an all-male Trojan women. And it came from my experience as the daughter of a veteran and thinking about what the relationship is between soldiers and the experience of women in daughters and wives of soldiers. And through that process, we actually didn't ever do that piece. We created this piece, which is called Occupied Territories. And it's very clearly a story of a father and daughter sort of reckoning with PTSD and the experiences of war.
Your father was in Vietnam.
He was.
So this is very close and personal to you.
Yeah. So he served in Vietnam in 1969, 1970, and while he was there, my older sister was born. So one of the inspirations of the piece is that my mother taped the birth on a cassette tape and sent it to my dad in Vietnam. And so he would tell this story of being out, sitting on the bunkers, watching the war happening in the distance, and listening to the sounds of my sister's first cries. And that juxtaposition of death and life in the same moment. And that moment actually is embodied in the play.
And so Nancy, I know that you also, you're a co-writer on this, also an actress in this as well. What has this meant to you to be involved in this project?
Oh, it's eye-opening, to say the least. I play the daughter in the story, which is based on, not actual, although the actual birth is in the play. And my character is struggling with the fallout of the legacies of trauma. So she is struggling with her recovery from heroin addiction. She has a fractured relationship with her family, and the family is gathering at the time of the father's death. So, and having to come to terms with all of the estrangement and her part in it, and her relationship to the war and to her father's history. So I have learned I don't have military history in my family, so that has been extremely eye-opening. And to write, this is a dual narrative that runs parallel to each other. So alternating scenes, we see the daughter, we see this family gathering around the death of the father and trying to come to terms with that. And then we see this young man dropped into 1969 Vietnam, his first deployment, his first experience of trauma, and so we're watching the two characters who will eventually intersect. We're watching them live through the things that shaped the family. We're watching him come to the new realization of what the world is really like. So the reason I'm saying that is I was able to enter it writing for a very young, innocent boy who was hopeful and committed in a patriotic way and in a very naive way. And then literally it goes chronologically, but we're writing it chronologically, watching the horrors of war shred him and the family. And then, of course, I had to dive into addiction, and in terms of a character, I had to understand the behavior and the needs of people who are not only struggling with it, but who have been drawn to substance and use and escape and all the things that create the world of addiction.
Now, I know that this was an off-Broadway production a few years ago, and it was on Martha's Vineyard and also in D.C. as well. This weekend, there will be 2 readings in Northampton, which is where you're from. Yeah. So will you have local veterans involved in those readings?
So all the characters in Vietnam are 19 to 22 years old. But what we did last year and we'll be doing this weekend is we're bringing 5 veterans, many of whom are Vietnam veterans, to read those characters. So they're in their 60s, some in their 70s, but they're reading for 19, 20, 21-year-olds. And then they're joined with 5 actors. So it's this collaboration between actors and veterans working on this play together. And it's very moving to be in the room with, we've been working and writing this play and actors have been embodying these characters, and now we are working with people who actually lived it. Yeah. And that's very moving, and it helps us learn about the play, and it helps the actors who are continuing to work on these characters to get deeper, because it's important to all of us that we tell the truth of the experience of addiction, the truth of the experience of PTSD, the truth of the experience of being in war, some of which is actually, like there's a centerpiece of the play that's about brotherhood and about the connections between soldiers that's unlike any connection that in my father's experience, his words, that there's no relationship he's had that is the same as that relationship he had with his fellow soldiers. And so that's at the center of the play too, that it's not an anti-war play, it's not a pro-war play. It's really a play that is unearthing the cost of war intergenerationally, and also the power of connection between soldiers and between family.
What have you heard from the Vietnam veterans who have, stepped into those roles? Because I have to imagine that would just bring up, so many memories, some that maybe they don't want to deal with.
Well, one of the veterans who did it last year and is doing it again this year, there's a couple things he said that really struck me. One, when he was doing it last year, one day in rehearsal, he just sat up and he said, he plays the role of Alvarez, one of the soldiers, and he sat up and he said, "I am Alvarez." And he said just the other day, he said, coming back to this and doing it last year, it's like shaking the dust off of things that really needed that shake. And what we found last year, and already is starting, we've been in a couple days of rehearsal so far this year, is that it's also around theater. And working on theater is really fun. So we're working on material that is challenging and brings up a lot for all of us. I mean, this was my experience, so it brings up a lot for me too, to work on, especially the family scenes. But we're having fun doing it because it's really fun to work on theater. So there's a lot of laughter, there's a lot of joy in the room, even though we're working on some challenging material.
And so there'll be 2 showings this weekend, Friday and Saturday, is that correct?
Yes.
And in Northampton. Mm-hmm. And so can people just find out more about this? Is it a free showing? It's
free. Reservations are recommended because we have limited seating.
And for you, as you, I know that you're an actress and you're a writer, how would you characterize this as far as the many different roles that you have played?
This role is fascinating in so many ways and has inspired me to then continue to create, to get involved in the recovery community in my hometown, and look for ways that I can create visibility and spotlight and support for people who are struggling with their recovery. I've learned so much about the tendencies that come with the need that lives in the world of addiction, and how exhausting that is for family members. Oh, I'm going to cry. How desperate the people around them feel. The stories are absolutely profound to me. So it has woken up a strong sense of activism and engagement that has actually taken off beyond this project, but was actually born here.
And we were just texting with my sister, who is the inspiration for the character of Jude that she is working on. Texting her about, we're going to be talking with people about the play. Are you okay that we talk about, my sister struggled with addiction for decades. And she texted back and she said, of course, tell the truth. Stigma dies in the light. And I feel like both with PTSD and with addiction. These are two places where there's a lot of stigma. And around that stigma, there's a lot of silence, and there's a lot of lack of communication. And we have found over the many performances we've done with this play, because we always have a talk back afterwards that people can stay and talk about things that come up from the play, that seems to be what the play is doing, is it's helping to bring that stigma up in the light, to help to create conversation where there's usually a lot of silence.